This is just to try to show you a few different things that we've got going on right now that you can participate in. Sample Return Robot Centennial Challenge. This is one that we ran the first time at WPI out in Massachusetts this past year. That one is basically trying to incentivize the design of a robot that can operate autonomously and collect interesting samples and keep those samples separate from each other because there's contamination issues when you're in the spirit of kind of Mars sample return and thinking in that spirit. It's a software problem, it's not a hardware problem. The autonomous part is what's hard. Having them actually be able to navigate without things like GPS, not using devices that rely on Earth-based error or GPS as a navigation tool. It should be able to work on another planet, which means you can't rely on the things that we usually rely on here. Very, very interesting one. That one's currently open. And the next event will be sometime next year, the next demonstration event. Centennial Challenges usually take a few years to get a winner because teams come in every year, they're demonstrating and iterating and learning something and seeing other things from competitors. And it usually takes them a few years to actually win those. Those aren't like overnight things, but you see some really interesting teams where it's dads and their sons, guys that did Robot Wars together in high school. You know, it's really interesting to see entering these things as teams. And in many cases, with the Lunar Lander Challenge that we had a few years ago, two of the entrants were companies, Armadillo Aerospace, Maston Space Systems. You guys may have heard of both of those. But they use this as an opportunity to get additional marketing, refine their product, get some work in with NASA. Now they both got downstream contracts with NASA. So these folks have actually used it as a business development opportunity. Right? Small businesses, but it's not just graduate mentors. They're small businesses that are coming to the table in these prize competitions as well. Big Data Challenge. This one's probably a very interesting one to many of you in the room. There is a big data working group in the federal government that is looking at issues of big data. And NASA has a lot of big data. The amount of data that we get down every day is kind of insane. It's a lot of information. And trying to deal with how you process, understand, analyze that data is a big problem. There's big industry around this. So part of what NASA is doing is leading the release of a few prize competitions around this issue of big data. So you can check this out on challenge.gov. This one's actually listed on challenge.gov. There's going to be, I believe, two, could be misremembering, but two challenges that are going to be coming out on this topic over the coming months that are around this topic of big data. Other ones. These are other ones that you should just keep your eyes on. The Night Rover Centennial Challenge, obviously, that we're working very closely with Josh on. This challenge, as he said, is really interesting because we're asking folks to help us figure out a more highly energy efficient storage system that allows, it gets really cold and dark on the moon for 14 days at a time in certain spots. So cold and dark that you can't operate machines there. Lunar night's a really big problem for doing things on the moon. So this challenge is trying to address that. But that density, you can imagine getting that density, meaning a lot of energy in a small space. Now the draw is not very, you're not requiring a lot of energy to actually make the thing work. So it would take a lot of scaling to make the draw work for other types of devices. But what are we trying to drive the energy density up from?
So the current state of the art is about 100 to 130 watt hours per kilogram. And the challenge competition, the highest level that we're going to be having for the maximum prize purse is 500 watt hours per kilogram.
So a 5x increase. So you can imagine how maybe that system as designed for this might not plug and play into a plane or into a car, but the component level innovation certainly could, potentially. Next one, Unmanned Aircraft Systems Challenge. This one is currently actually open for comment from the public. So we just released an RFI, which is a government term for we're asking you questions. Just released an RFI 2 days ago that's looking for public comment on an unmanned aircraft system RFI, which Mike or Sam both could talk to you guys a little bit more about later if you're interested. But it's essentially it's really hard to have unmanned aircraft, some people call them drones, operate in national airspace because of a system issue. So we're looking at actually the communications and system issues associated with those devices being able to operate in the same airspace. So it's a really interesting, hard problem that DoD is interested in, that FAA is interested in, NASA is interested in. So all these organizations are working together in order to try to get at some solutions through a prize competition.
FEMA.
And FEMA, yeah, and FEMA as well. Yep. So these are the things that are relevant right now for you folks. Potentially, if you're interested or have questions in any of these, feel free to track one of the three of us down after. So hopefully I gave you some good stats or talking points about why NASA likes challenges.